The countdown is on for Africa's first global business community gathering known as the B20 Summit here in Johannesburg. Now, the B20 South Africa Sherpa, Kes Kuvadia, and the B20 South Africa Trade and Investment Task Force's Busi Mabuza are my guests tonight. To both of you, thank you very much for making time for this important discussion. Let me start with you, Ms. Mabuza. As chair of the B20 South Africa Trade and Investment Task Force, what have been some of the key focus areas of your work in the past year? What stood out for you?
Well, without a doubt, business leaders, and we had over 200 people in the task force representing businesses across different sectors, small, medium, from G20 nations and from the African continent. Business was calling for the restoration of a stable, predictable trade environment because business needs that in order to plan and to invest. We have, in terms of our recommendations, also as a nod to the fact that this is the first time ever that the G20 heads of state will be hosted by an African nation.
Yeah.
The task force has called for a new trade and investment deal for the African continent. And we are saying that, recognizing that there are several initiatives, such as the G20 Compact with Africa and other initiatives, but we are calling for the consolidation of all these initiatives in partnership with the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat in order to gear up for implementation of the AfCFTA and in order to enable African business to be more competitive. Finally, our task force is, of course, recognizing the fact that trade does impact the carbon emissions in the economy. We're calling for a climate-responsive trade system that leaves no one behind. So we are saying to the G20 nations, support sectors that need the support, tangibly so, make sure that the systems are interoperable and that the standards have been agreed by everybody.
We'll come back to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area because that seems to also have been a very big part of this drum-up to this climax, which is what we are facing this week. Let's come to you, Mr. Kuvadia. As Ms. Mabuza has mentioned, she is pointing out very loudly that this is a historic first for not only South Africa, but the continent at large. What are some of the big themes for you that you'd like to see come out of this summit?
So we are expecting close on to 2,000 people at the summit. We've been fortunate, I guess, in some ways we've had to turn people away. So that's great.
That's how much interest
That's how much interest there is, right? And so that's phenomenal. I think the theme of the B20, South African B20, has been inclusive growth, prosperity in a cooperating world. So we're absolutely clear that growth is important and inclusive growth is important that benefits and enable the majority of the people in the globe to prosper. And we're sending out the clear message that you can only achieve that through collaboration and cooperation. Okay. So what are the big themes? Big themes are open economies, multilateral institutions, but also that we have the opportunity and the time is now ripe to reset. And by reset means we believe in multilateralism through multilateral institutions, but those institutions need to be restructured to reflect the changing global economic situation, okay? We believe that while there are geopolitical problems, and we know that the US is not attending the G20, but we believe that this is also an opportunity for different alliances, different relationships, and the G20 countries are essentially saying that we want to collaborate, we want to build inclusive economies, we want to include small, medium enterprises and women and youth in that. And so we've been absolutely clear at the B20 that each of our task forces has hard-coded women empowerment and SME development. So that will be a key theme. Then the other key theme is, as Busi says, trade that also talks to climate change. We're talking about resilient economies and resilient business sectors. We're talking about, we added an 8th task force here for industrial development and transformation because we believe that's important for the continent. So we believe the continent has all the resources. It has terrific opportunities, and we need to turn those opportunities into value-add products here that we export, but also export minerals and so on for the new economy. And so those are the critical themes: growth, inclusive growth, collaboration, trade and investment, access to finance, and ensuring that Africa is treated on a level playing field when risk is assessed, climate resilient economies. Then we're talking to the demographics in Africa, the young population, so skill the young population for employment and growth. So those are some of the themes that will come up.
Quick follow-up. You mentioned the United States. Has it been a disappointment for you that they have totally pulled out at the last minute?
Well, U.S. business has been very supportive right from the beginning. So C-suite U.S. business people have participated in task forces, including in Busi's task force. The United States Chamber of Commerce, to whom we hand over, has participated. So U.S. business will be here. It is a pity that on the political front, the U.S. has decided not to come, but as our president said in your clip just now, it is, the loss of those who are not participating. There are 19 countries, plus the AU, plus the EU, that are around the table and are going to talk about world issues and how we grow economies. And so if you don't participate, it's your loss, unfortunately. And we need to carry on.
Indeed, and such an important reminder that the AU is actually part of this G20 group of countries. Let's talk about the trade and investment angle, Ms. Mabuza. What do you see as the most significant proposal that will shape this global trade system that is inclusive?
Clearly, there's no doubt in our minds that this is an ideal opportunity for us to remind ourselves and our G20 partners that Africa needs to move beyond the assessment as having potential, as being a fantastic opportunity, and move beyond the rhetoric. So our call for a new trade and investment deal is actually aimed at catalyzing both intra-Africa trade via accelerating the implementation of the AfCFTA. Fantastic work has been done at a policy level. We now need to kick into gear, and business needs to make sure that we're in the room to ensure that our lived experience, either in transporting goods from Johannesburg to Kinshasa, is actually encoded in the regulatory dispensations that are being put in place. We're doing this, we're calling for this not just for the enablement of intra-Africa trade, which at the moment is at a woeful 17% compared to other regions such as the EU, which achieve in the order of 60% intra-trade.
You think this summit could help galvanize this intra-Africa trade even more? What are the obstacles?
We actually have not just left it to thinking. We have made the policy proposals, But in addition, we've put in place KPIs and approached institutions. So our policy calls are to government. We're saying, here's the environment that business needs. But institutions that have participated in our task force have put up their hands to say, we are ready to support the implementation of the AfCFTA, not just for to support intra-Africa trade, but to support the competitiveness of business in the continent to trade with the rest of the globe and the G20 nations.
Mr. Kuvadia, discussions are going to be had, long discussions. How do you avoid this from becoming a talk shop? What am I asking you? I'm asking for tangible impact for businesses within the country and the wider continent.
Yeah. So I think I need to stress that the summit is a culmination of the work that we've done during the course of the year. Okay, so it's not a question of what the summit is going to produce. We, through task forces like the one Busi chaired and others, 8 task forces, we've been working throughout the year with about 12 to 1,400 C-suite people and business organizations from the G20 countries, from the rest of Africa, and developing recommendations. So we handed over 30 recommendations to the G20 on the 4th of September.
30 recommendations? 30,
from 8 task forces. And those are all on our website, and it's in those recommendations that the real meat of what we need to do is encapsulated. And we've deliberately fashioned the recommendation in a way that is actionable and implementable. So what the B20 hasn't done before, and because it doesn't have a permanent secretariat, you have these discussions every year. You give recommendations to the G20, and then nobody knows what happens to those. So we're trying to actually put into place, and I'm talking to the previous Sherpa, the US Sherpa, the next Sherpa, I believe might be the UK, to say how do we develop a mechanism to track these recommendations, which of them are accepted, which of them are applied, and from those that are applied, what is the impact? So the way we fashion recommendations, so let's just take access to digital infrastructure. And these aren't the real figures, I can't remember, but as an example, if currently, let's say, 20% of people have access to digital infrastructure in the world, we're saying that's the situation now, these are the recommendations, this is who should be applying the recommendation. Usually the G20 hands it over to a multilateral organization. And if you apply, by 2030, instead of 30%, we should be seeing 80%, right? And we want to track that, and we want to track the impact, because the B20 represents business. Business wants to see implementation and wants to see impact. And so it's in the meat is in those recommendations. The summit basically ties it all up. We'll have some global discussions. We'll have discussions in task forces about the work of the task forces, and it ties it all up, and then at the end there'll be a Sherpa's communique which will actually summarize everything. But the meat of the stuff is in those recommendations.
Business wants to see impact, and I think it's a perfect way to wind down our conversation, Ms. Mabuza. The key takeaways for the business community coming out of this summit. You're saying already that lots of work has gone into this. You've had a year-long discussion behind the scenes. This is now the culmination of that work. What will be the key takeaways for you?
It will be to see actual results on the ground. And may I use an example? Yesterday, we launched the task force's special report on inclusive trade, with a special focus on micro, small, medium enterprises, women-owned and youth-owned enterprises. We had organizations such as the International Chamber of Commerce, John Denton, who is very well known. We have Trade Routes Africa, we have the AfCFTA Secretariat. We had a regional or Pan-African bank such as ABSA in the room, development finance institutions committing to incubating small and medium enterprises to take advantage, competitively so, of the CFTA opportunity, not just in the continent, but also in the globe. Another example is that we called for, at the time of making our recommendations, the foreign direct investment into the continent still stood at $52 billion for the previous year. Of course, UNCTAD has issued new numbers and that has ticked up, even though most of it is focused on the northern part of the continent. And we said by 2030, we would like to see over $100 billion of FDI coming into the continent per annum, and this should then stem the flow of raw materials to go and be beneficiated outside of the continent so that we capture value here.
Mr. Kuvadia, you get to have the last word. I asked Ms. Mabuza for key takeaways. For you, perhaps a slightly different angle to that question. The lasting legacy of this G20 taking place for the very first time on the African soil.
Yeah, so the B20 usually also has legacy projects. We've been working on those and we'll be announcing 11 legacy projects at the summit. So some of those are in country, some of those involve more than one G20 country, and we'll follow those up and see how we implement those. And then the most critical thing is, can we actually put together some sort of mechanism where we do actually have continuity of the B20 tracking the recommendation and measuring impact? Because if we don't do that, eventually C-suite people lose interest. And we believe, I mean, this is the G20 and the B20 is probably the most effective organization where critical countries of the North and South sit together. And the problems we talk about, inequality, lack of growth and so on, are not Southern problems anymore. They're also problems of the North. And so we should be talking together to see how we work together to address common problems. And I think the B20 and the G20 is a mechanism to do that, and we need to ensure continuity.
Kes Kuvadia, the B20 South Africa Sherpa, and Busi Mabuza, the B20 South Africa Trade and Investment Task Force Chairperson. Thank you very much for the discussion. It's been well worth it. Thank you very much indeed, and best of luck on this important milestone that's already been reached. If you understood the essence of our conversation, lots of work has been done, ground has been laid, and it's now simply putting the cherry on top.